This is Radar for On the Radar Entertainment Blog, coming to another edition of Movie Reviews Observations number 95. So this week I watched a whole range of movies. The first thing I watched was the Muggsy Bogues documentary, Always Believe. And for someone who did watch basketball in the late 90s, early 2000s, and of course saw the movie Space Jam, they're very familiar with Muggsy Bogues and think he should be in the Basketball Hall of Fame because it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. So they got plenty of people in the Hall of Fame who didn't have an amazing NBA career, and he had a pretty good one for being the shortest ever to play the game. It was a great one, inspirational. It showed his grandchildren and other people from the town where he's from. The cool thing is I didn't realize he played with a bunch of his high school classmates in the NBA or against them, and all these close relationships with, Steph Curry's dad, Del Curry, and all this stuff. So it was a great documentary. You learn a lot. That's a good point of a documentary. And then I watched another documentary called Diving Deep. And it's similar to the fact that if you paid attention, I watched a documentary called Dave Not Coming Back about a deep sea diver who saved somebody's life and didn't come back, or they weren't sure. This one was about this filmmaker an activist, pushed the boundaries of exploring and filming aquatic life and sea life down underwater, and it was good to see all the footage of the creatures down below and say we need to explore down there because we don't know what's down there, and you can learn about certain creatures and things like that. So yeah, it was educational. You learned some stuff, and again, that's the whole point of a documentary. Then the next thing I watched was a kids movie called SpongeBob on the Run, and I may have not seen every episode ever of SpongeBob because it's been on for 1,000 years, it seems like, but it wasn't a show that I vividly remember watching or passionate about watching. But I have seen pretty much all the movies they've made. The thing I know, this movie, there is no reality in terms of continuity, because they're like, oh yeah, Sandy went to summer camp with them as a little baby squirrel. Squidward went there as a baby little squid, and of course, Mr. Krabs ran a booth then. They showed Larry. They showed other characters. They showed the driving instructor being a counselor there. And from what I remember, I don't think SpongeBob met any one of those characters until he was like an adult. So that's again here. Now I do like that Matthew Berry was playing the bad guy, and they had a little Keanu Reeves in there and some other character, and it was about SpongeBob's relationship with Gary the snail. It was a good lesson, to always be there for your friends and even your coworkers, and realize that with SpongeBob not working at the Krusty Krab, things go downhill. And yeah, so it was a good children's movie, some lessons, some humor, some famous people in the movie. So overall, definitely if your kid is familiar with SpongeBob, you should watch this, and it's not a bad use of your time. Then I watched this movie called Princess in the Row. It was about a girl who doesn't want to live in foster homes or get adopted or live with her aunt, but she wants to live with her father because that's when she feels most comfortable, even though he had a brain aneurysm while serving this country, and he's a homeless guy living on the street, and he's not really stable unless he's actually on the street and not, indoors. And she goes through all the struggle of taking care of him and not going to school and dealing with people trying to rape her, abuse her, take advantage of the situation because she's a little girl and she needs help. And Anna Ortiz, I've seen her in plenty of TV shows and movies, so she was the children's counselor or whatever, trying to make sure she's okay. And Martin Sheen played one of the characters who was trying to adopt her and stuff like that. So I'm not going to say that this was a bad movie, but I'm not going to say it was a good movie. It doesn't matter if Morgan Freeman and other people put their money into producing this movie. If you want to see a movie about a father doing everything for his kid, struggling in the streets, watch In the Pursuit of Happiness. This one is about a girl trying to do everything to protect her father, but what's best for her father is to get the help and for her to, move on. So yeah, so it wasn't at least a waste of my time. It was only an hour and 27 minutes. Then I watched this movie called Arthur and Merlin, Kings of Camelot. And there's been plenty of movies and TV shows about King Arthur, about Merlin the Wizard, the Knights of the Round Table. There's been cartoons, there's been television shows where they talked about it, there's been comic books. And you're like, okay, cool. Arthur and his knights are out there fighting this war. He leaves one of his illegitimate sons in charge. But then he realizes that he's got to go home because his illegitimate son is trying to take command of Camelot and his army. And And then Sir Lancelot and him and the rest of them got to come back. Merlin's barely in the movie doing anything, but he's there more of guidance. And I don't know what happened here. This was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I watched it with my roommate. It felt like I was watching a high school Shakespearean play where they just were talking, and then barely was any fight scenes. And most of the fight scenes were horribly choreographed and staged and stupid. And how this witch came back and she's got the power, but then the other women, like his wife and these characters, can save the day and things like that, which is not realistic for the time period. It's realistic if it was 2022, women saving the day, but not back then, all the way in 463 AD. So I don't know how sometimes movies get made and people are like, oh yeah, the dude from Game of Thrones, Richard Brake, is in this movie and he's a good British actor. But based on the cover and description, this was one of the most disappointing movies to watch based on all the things you already know about it. And I know they're trying to get a different take, but yeah, this movie was so solely placed for a 91-minute movie credit that I don't know how these movies get made. Then I watched the horror film The Beach House, and I liked the interesting thing where they looked into it as the water, something's contaminating the water and inhabiting the people and, creatures and stuff. So it's an interesting take. I can admit, fell asleep a little bit of it because it was kind of slowly paced for a horror film that was, an hour and 27 minutes. I may go back and watch maybe the 10 minutes or so that I missed. But basically the premise is these college kids, one who dropped out and one who's in college, decide they need to talk about their relationship. So this dude's father owns a house somewhere in this small town area, and they think it's unoccupied, but then there's a couple who knew his father, they're staying there and they're hanging out, and then all this stuff starts to happen and stuff. So it was okay. I don't get the certified fried and fresh tomato. Maybe the 10 minutes I missed could clarify exactly of what makes this a good movie, but don't tell me on the back fast moving. It was very slow moving. It was more of a romance movie turned into horror. And then I watched this movie called Hal King, and it's his coming-of-age musical, and that's okay to have a musical and it's based off the Shakespearean King Henry IV. Okay, so it's set during the jazz era, and they're over in the war. But if it's going to be a musical play, there's two parts involved in that. One is the singing and choreography, which they were singing 99% of the time in the movie, so that's checked, singing, dancing, and moving around, choreography. But the acting, some of these people's acting is horrible and unbelievable at how bad they can be at acting, and that's the other part of the musical. And then the first 30-40 minutes of the movie, people are just taking turns singing at a night lounge. If it's a musical, you got to actually be doing things while you're singing, not just taking turns singing for the first 30-40 minutes of the movie. Then it goes to war, and they're singing during war, and the acting is horrible then. And then the two main characters, it's a love story, and their fathers are political rivals, and one dies, and the other one doesn't want his daughter to be with him, and then everybody dies, and it's just okay, cool. This movie dragged on for almost an hour and 50-something minutes, almost 2 hours, and the acting was horrendous, and it just was horrible. I don't know why this was even made in the first place. Again, some of these movies, this and Arthur, I don't get how these movies get made, but also get greenlit to actually be on DVD and be in movies. Okay, so again, the best things I watched this week were the Muggsy Bogues documentary and Diving Deep documentary. Two documentaries where you actually learn something, and the SpongeBob movie because it's for funs and giggles. You just throw it on in the background or you watch it with a chill out and you laugh. The Beach House was an okay horror film. I could see them doing something different this time, but yeah. Not the world's greatest week for things that I've watched. One of the documentaries and another SpongeBob movie is what's the best. But thanks for listening to another edition of Movie Reviews and Observation number 95. For On the Radar Entertainment Blog, I'm Radar. See you guys next time.